Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Welcome into a Saturday check-down episode of Purple Daily. We're going to give you, from time to time, these short little check-down episodes, otherwise known as the predictions that Judd and Declan both make on Wednesday Write That Down segments. Check-downs.
Yeah, okay. It's true for me. I can't speak for that.
Oh, wow. He just admits, just cops to it.
I try to.
Just cops to it. The show is presented by our friends over at TCL, now an official partner of the NFL, one of the world's best-selling consumer electronics brands. They have a new lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution, all at an affordable cost. Enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. So, been doing some soul searching here. I was telling you guys off the microphone, AJ in for Declan here for one more day as Declan completes his vacation in warmer sections of the country. Been doing some soul searching about my Kirk Cousins hate, if you will. It's not really hate. It's just, I just want the Vikings to be a championship team at some point. And I think some of it stems from, I am a 37-year-old adult male who's been watching the Vikings since about 1990 consciously. I remember parts of like the 90 and 91. I remember the end of the Jerry Burns run into the beginning of the Dennis Green run and all of the 90s. So in my life, the Vikings haven't had what I would call a young, long-term franchise quarterback. And I think you can say the same throughout the 80s too, depending on how you want to classify Tommy Kramer. But how I've kind of defined this is young, meaning like they're in their early 20s when you get them. So they're like you draft them and they're yours.
Right.
Joe Burrow with the Bengals is going to be this. Patrick Mahomes, right? Troy Aikman with the Cowboys back in the 90s. Long term meaning 7 to 10 years minimum. So give me Dante was like 5 and then his knee blew out. So he checked the first box, which is he was homegrown, he was young, he was ours, right? And then his knee blew out, and it wound up being like a 5-year run. Mm-hmm. Franchise meaning regularly considered one of the top 7-ish quarterbacks in the NFL, that's where I think Tommy Kramer probably goes sideways. Mm-hmm. There might have been a couple years where he popped up. And there's some subjectivity here, but Fran Tarkenton was this absolutely. Kirk Cousins, 5 years, so he doesn't quite check the long term. I don't think he's ever really been considered a top 7 elite quarterback, and he certainly isn't young. They got him from Washington when he was 28 years old.
Right.
So unless I'm missing something, by that definition, which again is sort of subjective, but 7+ years, regularly considered among the best quarterbacks in the NFL, 5 to 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And a guy that you sort of cultivate from the draft. He's yours.
Right.
It's been 50 years since the Vikings have had that. And I set out, and we can get into some of this, I was curious, how many other teams are like the Vikings, where they're just kind of patchworking it? Maybe they find a Cousins for a few years, or they whiff on a bunch of draft picks. But before I get into some of the things that I found there, do you have the same sort of, you guys have been following this team forever. I'd like to see that for this franchise. The Bengals know who their quarterback's going to be for 10 years. The Chiefs know now. The Bills, right? We never know that with the Vikings. When's the last time you felt like, oh yeah, this is the Vikings quarterback for the next 10 years? Maybe Dante before the knee.
Yeah, the last guy that came close was Culpepper for sure. Which is also why you have to take chances on drafting QBs. Keep in mind, this franchise in 1999 had Brad Johnson. They included him in the trade. They had Cunningham. They had quarterbacks who the Vikings don't ordinarily draft because in their mind they've had guys. And this is where you get into, are you willing to draft a guy who you might not even need at that time because you see the potential to fit this bill? Yeah. Quite frankly, the Vikings have far too rarely shopped for this guy. That's my biggest problem. It's not only the whiffs, it's more so the deciding that you're afraid to whiff and so that you don't make the pick. Ponder isn't a perfect example of a guy that they perceived and they were absolutely wrong. But go through the drafts and look at the amount of times where the Vikings had a veteran QB or they felt he's good enough, so they didn't take a chance.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would hope that they hired Kwesi and O'Connell with a conscious decision of, no, we are going to now find people who can at least know what they're doing in taking that chance. Because the Vikings, you know, I mean, I can go through the list, Phil, since 2000, right? Of guys that they've drafted and thought, okay, that's going to be the guy. They went into 2000 with Culpepper. Unfortunately, in 2005, his knee blew up. They tried on Ponder. They tried on Teddy. And unfortunately, again, his leg blew up. But they have not, since Tarkington, I don't think they have, if you go back through it, I think we did this on the old show once. It is really remarkable the amount of times that they haven't taken swings because of assumptions or they were afraid that if they took the swing, it might fail.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've taken 4 swings since 1977 on first or second round quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Now there was a Vikings blog, I believe it's Vikings Territory, run by Dustin Baker, that tried to dunk on our episode where we said, hey, they've only done this 4 times since 1977. That doesn't seem like enough. And he came in and tried to say, well, the average team has only drafted 4.5 quarterbacks in the first or second round over that stretch. Therefore, stop complaining, right? Mm-hmm. And my counter to that would be, okay, well, let's just look at the teams that have never found the guy, right? And the Vikings are in that boat. And 4 is less than 4.5 being average there. So you could still say that they are drafting at a below average rate, taking swings in the first and second round on quarterbacks. Being a franchise that largely whiffs, like you should be taking more chances. So it kind of validates the point even more. I have counted of the 32 franchises, I believe 23 of them have found this quarterback at least once or more since the 1970s. I'm counting the current Chiefs, Ravens, and Jaguars. And now the Ravens have to figure out this Lamar contract situation, but I do think Mahomes, Lamar, and Trevor Lawrence are checking that box for those 3 franchises. The Bengals have had, and I'm counting Burrow for the Bengals, but they also had Boomer Esiason was kind of this guy. A couple Super Bowls in the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. Patriots, Tom Brady. Bills have had Josh Allen, Jim Kelly. Cowboys, Troy Aikman, Tony Romo. And again, I'm kind of saying like among the 7-ish best quarterbacks in the league throughout the majority of your time. Romo was in there. Aikman was in there. Packers, Favre and Rodgers, Hall of Famers. Colts, Manning and Luck. Luck would have been a Hall of Famer if he had kept playing. Steelers, Big Ben. Giants, Eli Manning and Phil Simms. Although it's funny because Eli Manning usually wasn't one of the 7 best, but he also he was there forever and played like one of the best when they needed him the most a couple times. So I think he counts. Dolphins, Dan Marino. Commanders had Joe Theismann for a decade. They've been searching ever since. Eagles, McNabb, Randall Cunningham, and Ron Jaworski. Nice run for the Eagles with young franchise quarterbacks.
I think they got Jaws from the Rams.
Okay, so they did make a trade there.
So I think that, yeah.
But he was young. 49ers, Joe Montana, Steve Young. Seahawks had Russell Wilson. Titans, Steve McNair. That's a borderline one. He was there for a long time. I don't know if he was always like a top 7 quarterback. Saints with Drew Brees. Broncos with John Elway. Chargers, Phillip Rivers, Dan Fouts, maybe now Justin Herbert. They've had a nice run of quarterbacks. Falcons, Mike Vick and Matt Ryan. Mm-hmm. Raiders, I don't know, man. Derek Carr was there for a long time.
Yeah, I would say no.
They've had mercenaries like Rich Gannon and Carson Palmer, but they're kind of fringe.
Yep.
Panthers had Cam Newton. I think he would qualify for a stretch. So that leaves like 19, like a third of the league is in the same boat as the Vikings. The Lions, the Browns, the Jets, no franchise quarterbacks, like long-term elite franchise quarterbacks. The Bears, unless you want to count Jay Cutler, I don't think I do. I don't think he was ever regularly a top 7 quarterback.
Yeah, yes. The Bears I don't count.
Texans had Matt Schaub for a while, but
Vikings loved him.
Did they?
Yeah, they loved him. I think they tried to acquire him.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, he washed out fairly quickly, if memory serves.
Cardinals are 4 years into Kyler Murray, but that's kind of going sideways. Tampa Bay, they won Super Bowls with mercenaries Brad Johnson and Tom Brady, but they've never found the long-term guy. Mm-hmm. And then the Rams. The Rams had Kurt Warner for like 4 years, even though he was a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Then they have Mark Bulger, Sam Bradford, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford. So they've like been to a bunch of Super Bowls, but they've never had like the 7 to 10 year guy. Despite that, so kind of interesting when the Vikings aren't alone, but I would love for them at some point. And well, you're just gonna snap your fingers and just draft a Patrick Mahomes. Well, the Chiefs did.
Well,
so yes, that's what I would like to see at some point. Maybe not quite Patrick Mahomes. He's the greatest quarterback of all time, but
And I think the most important question too, and the Vikings have had this, but probably not enough, is do you have the infrastructure to develop that player too?
Yeah.
Like Denny, say what you want about him, but I still contend he was a damn good coach. And he took Culpepper, and they milked about as much as you possibly could from Dante. Yeah. That 2004 remains an incredible year. I didn't, when I covered him in 2005 before he got hurt, I was not a huge fan, and things went sideways very quickly. But if you look at what they got from Culpepper after drafting him and surprising a lot of folks with that pick, I think he was the 11th overall pick when they made that trade. They really got a lot from him. Childress took Tavares Jackson. If Tavares Jackson had a chance to be good, Brad certainly didn't maximize it.
Yeah.
So that's the other question is, and Zimmer was never going to care a lot or maximize a quarterback who wasn't like Teddy was his perfect guy, but he's probably not the perfect QB, right? Like probably not the perfect, oh my God, this guy can do this, this, and this. So the reality is, Ken O'Connell, can he now not only identify that guy, but with the warts, can he then develop that guy? Because your list went through a lot of guys who were given a really good quarterback infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do wonder if some of these guys would have wound up with, other coaches or organizations. I mean, the Tom Brady one is the one that everyone debates. Like, what if he had been drafted by the Browns?
But I mean, what's Mahomes? And I'm not saying he wouldn't be very damn good still, okay? But if Mahomes doesn't get Reed, who, by the way, had gone through a lot with McNabb, I think that Andy Reid in Philadelphia learned a ton. Because there were a lot of years where it's like they can't get past the conference championship game, right?
Yeah.
And now he listens to young, he's got young offensive minds around him. And Mahomes deserves a ton of credit for his own development. But that's my question. Take Patrick Mahomes and put him on the Raiders. Not saying he wouldn't be good. But does it work this well?
Yeah, the partnership with Reed, just like the partnership between Brady and Belichick. But Belichick was a defensive-minded coach, but they both had kind of the same toughness and want to just gouge the eyes out of their opponents. So, yeah, it's circumstance, but maybe I think the Vikings have really good infrastructure. Whenever they do decide to take this shot, this year, next year, you've got a tight end, you got a receiver, you've got offensive tackles, you got a head coach. So we'll see. Speaking of mocking and drafts.
I want to mock! Mock!
We have for you, just released late this week, the Athletics 2023 Beat Writer Mock, where each beat writer for each team basically plays general manager, and they're allowed to, interact and make trades with each other as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big break for our guy, Alec, who is now on the Wild beat. A young guy who's been very good, but this is a lot of pressure.
He's on the Wild beat now?
Or I'm sorry, on the Vikings beat.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow.
Yeah,
no. Mike Russo.
I'm sorry. I was talking so much previously with AJ about the Wild that I had a brain schism.
So let's go through this here. Let's see. This is the first time I'm opening this up here. So we have a trade right out of the gate here. The Indianapolis Colts have traded up for Bryce Young as the number 1 overall pick. We've done about 19 of these mock drafts now. Over half of them have the Vikings taking cornerback in the first round. So we'll see what they've got. The Colts received the number 1 pick. The Bears received the number 4 pick, a 2nd round pick, a 5th round pick, and a future 1st round pick from Indianapolis to move up just 3 spots.
It's good to be bad.
My God. Judd's envy of the Bears knows no bounds. They're going to win
really
2 games again next year, and Judd's going to be like, yes, this is my franchise.
They might go out and sign some guys. I'm not positive they're going to be as bad as they were.
Well, they have to go sign some guys. They've got a lot of money burning the hole. C.J. Stroud, number 2 to the Texans.
Okay.
Will Anderson to the Cardinals. Jalen Carter to the Falcons in a trade with the Bears. So the Bears are trading.
Oh, the Bears are going crazy.
So Falcons move up to 4, Bears move back to 8, and collect an additional second rounder and a second rounder next year. So the Bears have now picked up 3 extra seconds between now and next year, an extra first to stay in the top 10. Raiders draft Anthony Richardson, number 5, in a trade with the Seahawks. These trading beat writers. It's hilarious.
Of course. Wouldn't you?
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, you'd be
shooting my
moving all
shot.
around the board.
We have another trade. The Panthers trading up to 6 to draft Will Levis from Kentucky. So now all 4 top quarterbacks off the board in the first 6 picks. Okay, let's scroll here. Bears wind up with the offensive tackle from Northwestern, so he can just kind of walk to the stadium. Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois, to the Lions. He's the first cornerback off the board. First receiver goes to the Texans at 12, Quentin Johnston. Joey Porter Jr. to the Patriots at 14. Scrolling. Let's see here. Let's just get down a bit. Oh, there's Bijan Robinson, the running back to the Lions at 18.
Okay.
Drew Sanders, early linebacker here from Arkansas to the Bucks at 19. And then the Vikings. Let's get to the Vikings. Oh, wait a second. Nope, there we go. 24. They're picking in slot. This is from Alec Lewis, who covers the team. This isn't just someone who doesn't know what he's looking at.
Yes.
At number 24, according to The Athletic, the Vikings select, out of the University of Clemson, defensive tackle Brian, is it Bresci, whatever.
I want a mock.
Wow. All right, yeah.
Said trading down was an option. Selecting a cornerback could make sense here, but Bresci plugs a key gap in the Vikings roster. He's a pass rushing potential for a defensive line that needs it, especially considering the Vikings' current depth at the position. Dalvin Tomlinson, who this past season was the Vikings' best force up front, could become a free agent depending on negotiations play out. Harrison Phillips, reliable in run stopping. Tonga emerged late in the season. Still, Minnesota needs more help at the spot. He does have an injury history, an ACL tear and kidney infection.
Oh, no, Alec, what have you done?
But ultimately, the future outlook and upside bode well for a new-look defense under Brian Flores.
Oh, no, he's going to be in the tub. You can't make the club in a tub. No.
So there you go. They're drafting an injured interior defensive lineman with
to pair with Booth.
Kidney failure.
Andrew Booth and this kid can spend time together in the rehab room.
Man. All right, that's the first time we've seen him going to the Vikings. So props to the Athletic and Alec Lewis for at least finding a new angle here on a Vikings mock draft.
I want a mock.
I don't like it. I don't want a guy with an injury history already.
All right, well, you can send an angry tweet to Alec and fight it out publicly if you want to.
I just might do that.
All right, that's a wrap on this check down episode of Purple Daily. Thanks for hanging out with us. Please click the subscribe button and the like button on the YouTube channel. Help spread the word about this Vikings fan community you guys are helping us build, and we'll see you tomorrow.